Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Well, I gave you the 16 composers whose music I can't live without. It was a hard choice, but there's a sequel. I just wanted to make a separate video about it. You might say I'm cheating, but I'm not, and I think we'll have a little bit of fun with this one too. This is 16 composers I feel guilty aren't among those I couldn't live without. These are composers who wrote pieces that I adore, whose music I may love, but they just aren't on that first list. Now, there are many reasons a composer may make this the guilt list. Not just composers I love, actually. I have to modify that a little bit, because there are composers who you really feel you ought to love, but don't, or you feel cultural pressure from all the people around you loudly telling you how wonderful they are, and you just don't, but you feel like you should, and you acknowledge that they may be great, that they may have done astounding things. You respect them. You take their music seriously, and they're like I said, are pieces that you may adore, but they're just not on the list. For all of those reasons, complex reasons. And as you know from my first list, I've never been necessarily willing to pay obeisance to the German symphonic tradition. It's marvelous. I love symphonies. I adore orchestral music. I like instrumental music. I'm not really an opera guy. But the German school, it seems to me, gets a lot of inertia praise. They get this sort of lip service inertia. Oh yes, they're the most wonderful. And I just go by how I hear it, what I've heard over my life. And I didn't approach classical music with a bias toward that kind of music, or people loudly telling me how wonderful it had to be. In fact, if anything, it was just the opposite, because as I've said, my father was a very fine pianist, almost a piano prodigy, who was forced to play Bach and Schumann and all of those people, and he detested them. And so I had no pressure whatsoever. Even when I was playing piano, I started learning Debussy. That's who I wanted to play. So there you go. You know, I don't think we have to go by anything anyone else tells us. This is all about what we feel speaks to us most plainly. And all of this, by the way, is purely personal. It's completely separate from my professional work as a critic. Because I happen to think, actually, that as a critic, you can sometimes do better work with composers you dislike. Because if I hear a performance by a composer, not even I dislike, who doesn't excite you, we tend to go with extremes, right? You know, I said once in a video I had a Bach problem, and everyone started with, "Oh, you hate Bach." Well, no, I don't hate him at all. I think he's a genius. He's fabulous. He just doesn't speak to me in the same way that other composers do. That's how it goes. It's not like if you don't love something, you have to hate it. That's so weird. You know, we're so loose with terminology and so quick to move to extremes and everything, which I think is a terrible mistake. And so these are not composers who I dislike. I could give you 16 composers I loathe. Actually, I don't think I could come up with that many. I really don't. But because I don't really loathe anything that's musical. I think it's all kind of cool, actually. But the 16 composers that I feel guilty about, well, I feel guilty about them. What can I tell you? That's just the way it is. And so here is the list. Are you ready? This is going to be quicker because I'm not going to dwell on these things the way I did the other list. But Bach. Yeah, I know. Everyone says you're supposed to love Bach. That Bach is the fount of all musical wisdom, but up and up and up and up. Okay, he is. He's still on my list. It doesn't always do it for me. But as I was saying, that's the point I was making before I distracted myself with other blather, that you can sometimes professionally be better as a critic with music that you're not as thrilled about because you have a certain distance from it, number one. And number two, if a performance absolutely blows you away and it's music that you weren't inclined initially to like, then you really know it must be special. It's almost an easier way to find the great performances because it convinces you. And that's special. So consider that too. Anyway, as I'm saying, Bach is definitely number one on the list because he's Bach. Mozart. Mozart, I adore Mozart. Tons of stuff by Mozart, but I also think he wrote a lot of junk, and so I've always been more, or let's say junk, less interesting works. You know, when he was like 3 and whatnot. So I just think that you have to pick and choose, and there's 620 some odd Kerschel numbers to sort through. So Mozart, a lot of people sort of just accept the whole pile, hook, line, and sinker, or you can be a little bit more discriminating. And I think with Mozart, you need to be a little bit more discriminating. That's just me. Debussy, the guy I wanted to learn to play piano for Children's Corner, which I just, blows me away to this day. I don't know why he wasn't on the original list. I just don't know. I love Debussy. I think he was one of the great geniuses of music and an amazing composer. So there you go. But he wasn't on the list, and I feel guilty. Tchaikovsky, it's another one where I just adore his music, and I feel guilty he wasn't on the first list. But when I was being spontaneous and just coming up with the names, he might have made it. Who knows? On another day, any other day, it's possible he would have. But he just didn't this time around. Brahms. Brahms took me a long time to get into, and I've talked about that. He's a composer I admire tremendously. I do. You have to. You know, his level of craftsmanship is just the sine qua non of musical accomplishment. It really is. But it's taken me a long time to get into him, and I'm still getting into him. Although there are works of his, like the Sextet Number 2, which I've talked about a billion times here, that I just find shatteringly, stunningly beautiful. It's on my list of pieces I want to take to my grave. But as a whole, well, that's another issue. So there you go. Schumann. Well, that's my dad. Every time he had a Pavlovian reaction to Schumann, every time you said Schumann, he would like turn green and start to drool. So I kind of grossed me out, and so Schumann also, he's basically a piano guy, and I was tempted to be a pianist, but it didn't work, and well, Schumann's on the list. Rachmaninoff. I always felt about Rachmaninoff, however much I love him, and I do, that he just didn't write enough. You know, there are wonderful, wonderful pieces, and also that his style is somewhat monotonous. You know, yeah, it's got to have the dies irae, it's got to have bells in it, it's got to have this sort of really dense, somewhat turgid harmony sometimes. You know, I mean, of course, it's fabulous music, but I get a sense with Rachmaninoff that, having heard so much of the few works that everybody loves, that you kind of know it and you can move on. And that's just me. Verdi. Oh God, I love Verdi, but I'm not really an opera guy. I never have been. And so opera always was taking second place. Even though if I had to do like vocal music, Verdi, well, I've done vocal music. We've done vocal music in this series too. You know, Verdi's way, 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 way up there. He may be my favorite after Janacek. I don't know. But Verdi is amazing. Copland. Copland was, the greatest American composer in at least the first half of the 20th century, and a tremendous creative mind and a distinctive musical voice. And I love it. But, well, his reputation seems to hang on, a handful of popular works. I like a lot of the less popular stuff, like the Short Symphony, which I've talked about, which is amazing, and which I've never seen live. I would love to see it live. So it was on my bucket list, I think. So, I think he's a great composer. He's a really great composer, and I enjoy listening to him all the time. I mean, just because, these composers who are on my guild list, some of them may get more play than the ones whose music I can't live without, because that's just the way it works. It depends on how you feel. But he didn't make the other list for some reason. And Prokofiev, it's the same thing. Prokofiev's a composer I listen to constantly, all the time. And he wrote wonderful things in a whole variety of media. I mean, he wrote ballets and symphonies and operas and piano sonatas and all kinds of nifty stuff. It's patchy, though. I mean, his output is variable. That's true. He's not the composer where I think you discover things all the time, as you do with someone like Haydn or, Shostakovich's output, I think, has more variety. But Prokofiev was pretty damn fine. Chopin, well, he was all piano. Nothing but piano. I love the piano. I do. I mean, I tried to play the piano, and I don't have any resentment over the fact that I couldn't. I'm dazzled with admiration for the people who could do it better than I could, which means I'm dazzled with admiration for probably everyone. And Chopin is a great, great composer whose music I love very much, but he's sort of a specialty composer for me. I play the music when at very particular times. I've listened to tons of it and I admire it and love it, but not on my list the first time around. Schubert, because of my leader problem, it's like my Bach problem. Leader, I can sort of take or leave as a whole. I much prefer popular songs to classical songwriting. I really do. As you saw from my list of 16 songs, I don't like the whole cultural snobbery that surrounds art songs. And I see it here, quite frankly, in the comments, the people who just insist. It just gotta be that because it may have a poem by Goethe and the music is by Schubert, it has to be greater than something by, a rock group. Well, no, it doesn't. And as far as I'm concerned, 99% of the time, it's not. Because a song musically, people have a real problem getting this through their heads. But musically, a song is a song is a song. And it doesn't matter whether it was written in the 10th century or yesterday. The criteria for excellence are the same. You have to have good words and you have to have music that fits the words magnificently. And that unity of text and music can happen in any style or genre at all. It makes no difference, even though Schubert was an amazingly great songwriter. No question about it. And I've been enjoying them more as time goes on, too. So, but, the other stuff he wrote, a couple symphonies, some fabulous chamber music, and, that's it. It's astoundingly fabulous music. No question about it. But as a whole, as a totality, it didn't get on my initial list of the big 16. Richard Strauss, well, he himself said he was a very good second-rate composer, and that about says it all, doesn't it? I wrote a book about him because I really wanted to get into him in more depth, and I was astonished, actually, at the excellence of a lot of his later music, particularly the comic operas, which get no attention because they're comic operas, and people are not quite sure what to make of them, and also because the comedy is of a very bourgeois type, let's put it that way. It's always about money and people who want money and don't have enough money. And it always fascinates me that that topic keeps coming up in Strauss's work. It's very, very strange and kind of, I don't know, shabby maybe. Maybe you could come up with other things to laugh about than the getting rid of your eldest daughter because you want money. But hey, he was a terrific composer, and he wrote tons and tons of great music, and he's just not on my first list. Elgar is one of those guys. Of course, the English bludgeon us with Elgar. You just can't get away from Elgar. I mean, the English just keep. My English composer is Vaughan Williams, who I think was about 50 times the composer that Elgar was. But Elgar came from very different roots, and he didn't write very much that we consider to be his great stuff, his mature stuff. It started with the Enigma variations, and then you just have two symphonies and the violin concerto, and some people say the cello concerto. I don't. A couple overtures, a couple tone poems, the pomp and circumstance marches. That's Elgar. It's good. It's wonderful. Sometimes it's great. But for me, there isn't enough range to stuff him in my category of the 16 people I can't live without. Puccini. Oh, Puccini. Well, I have to be honest about Puccini. Puccini is gorgeous. His melodies are gorgeous. His operas are thrilling and dramatic and exciting. And he had a sense of timing, as Richard Strauss did not, when it came to dramatic things happening. In Strauss operas, the opera begins after the plot's over and everything's settled. And then they all come out and sing for 20 minutes. And it's the best part of the opera and also the most unnecessary. But Puccini, no, it's all just really exciting and direct and dramatic and gut punchy, emotional, and all that stuff. What I find about Puccini is that it doesn't have quite the staying power. In other words, once you know it, you know it. You're not going to find hidden depths in Puccini. It's all right there on the emotional surface and very, very beautiful. But I find it isn't as repeatable as composers who have, maybe more elusive things to say, or a more musically complex style, or I don't know how else to describe it. That's my impression, and that's how I feel. And last but not least, Bartók. Now, Bartók is a screaming 20th century genius, and I adore his music. And I mean, the Sonata for Two Pianos and Percussion is one of my all-time ultimate fabulous pieces that somehow doesn't get on any of these lists. I have to find a way. I must find a way. It's incredible. I mean, his string quartets are amazing. His orchestral works, the piano concertos, the concerto for orchestra, a lot of his orchestral work, Bluebeard's Castle, which is a knockout. I mean, he was a great, 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 great composer. His star seems to be waning somewhat right now. He doesn't have quite the cachet that he used to, for some reason. I'm not sure why that's the case. He could very easily have been on my other list. He could have, because I find his music extraordinary and I just love it. But it wasn't there, and I feel so guilty. So that's it, the guilt list. And I'm more than happy to invite you to provide your own guilt list. A real limit, 16, that's it. Because let's face it, there are hundreds of composers that we could make lists about who we enjoy for whatever reason we enjoy them. I mean, it just is what it is, right? And it's fun to do this. It's fun to do this because it forces you to evaluate your own taste and to think about the unbelievable richness of our musical life and tradition and the options that we have. And that's what I get out of it. And that's why I'm happy to do this. And I hope you are too. I mean, your lists have been amazing, just amazing, phenomenal. So I'm really looking forward to your guilt list. Yes, guilt. You should know about it. Well, I know about it. If you're Jewish, you know guilt. But we can also have, there's all kinds of other guilt that you can deal with as well. And you can use that to productive account in giving me your list of composers who you feel guilty did not make the first list. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.